Patterson joining me, California GOP chair. So first, your reaction on Biden suspending his 2024 presidential campaign. Your former attorney general, former senator, now stepping into that role as the presumptive nominee.
Well, I've been talking about Biden not being the nominee since June of last year. So we didn't know exactly how it would go down. And it seemed like he was digging in and even had his surrogates out talking on Sunday that he's running through the finish line in November. But here we are, and the Democrats continue to be in disarray. But Californians know Vice President Harris, and we know her all too well. For every single field policy that she has brought to the national stage and Americans have felt over the last 3.5 years, Californians felt it first, and they felt it worst.
So what do you think should be the strategy of running against Kamala Harris?
Well, think you have to go straight to her record, because what the Democrats will do is they'll try and put a shiny bow over it. We saw what they did with President Obama, and they're going to try and do the same thing with someone like Vice President Harris. And what we need to do is focus on her record. So when one of the most important issues for Americans right now is public safety, look at what she did in California. And I know you appreciate us getting into the weeds, so we're going to talk some details here. In California, we have the proposition system. And in that system, the Attorney General is responsible for writing the title and summary for every one of the propositions that we have. A couple that we had about a decade ago when Vice President Harris was then Attorney General Harris, we had Proposition 47. She titled it the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. This decriminalized theft up to $950. So when you see these videos of people ransacking grocery stores, jewelry stores, you name it, any smash and grab that's been happening in California is because of this proposition that decriminalized theft up to $950. That same time, we had Proposition 57. She titled that the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act. This was the early release of felons into our neighborhoods. What do you think you get when you put criminals back out on the street? You get more crime. 10 years later, we are still dealing with the repercussions of these two propositions. In fact, we have a new proposition on the ballot this coming November that is reforming all of these so-called criminal justice reforms. This is the type of stuff that we need to be talking about, the policies that Vice President Harris has championed her entire career and what the fallout is. No one is looking at California when it comes to public safety saying that's what we should be doing.
Well, you know, they've already started, and I'll say the obvious. I covered this yesterday on radio and television. It's coming more and more. That is that, you know, Kamala Harris is the black woman. This is the image. And if you dare go against her, if you dare disagree with her on incarceration policies or Senate votes, which are record, right? If you dare disagree with anything, then you're immediately a racist, misogynist. And it's not that they're going to do this. They were doing this the time the letter came out at 1:45 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. It was as if everybody was on the same page, well planned ahead of time, which it was. The emails went out. I know. I have one of them. But this is what's being put up there. So, Jessica, and frankly, speaking as a woman, you're more qualified to speak as a woman than I am. I'm a man. How do you run against that effectively?
Well, I think you're already seeing parts of that part of the plan falling apart. When you have an organization like Black Lives Matter that is coming out and saying this is not democracy, they put the whole timeline out there, from everything from the president to resignation to his endorsement to the vice president talking about going out there and earning the nomination. And then 24 hours later, you have the nomination, enough votes to get to the nomination. Delegates is not democracy. And the problem with what the Democrat Party has done is that they have pulled back and said, we don't care about democracy. The party that has been shouting and screaming about democracy for years now, when it was convenient for them, has completely blown it away because they were unwilling to go through the process the first time. And they know what that looks like. When Vice President Harris ran for president, she didn't even make it to Iowa. She was out before they started. Your first day is always your best day. And so I think the Democrats have a lot to go over the next few days. We're going to see what happens. And when organizations that have been clearly in your corner are saying what you are doing is wrong, that is a problem for them. But I say again, we need to focus on the policy. When we talk about the border issues, this is, again, a huge issue for Americans. But this is what we've not just seen how she's failed over the last 3.5 years as our borders are and trying to figure out what the root causes for illegal immigration is. We saw this back in California. She was one of the individuals that championed sanctuary cities like San Francisco becoming a sanctuary state in California. These are policies that she has championed. This is who she is at her core, and that is what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about the policies.
No, and I get that, and I do understand it. However, it is effective with the Democrat base. For one, they come home. You know, I had a caller earlier, and we discussed those people, the Democrats who voted for Biden, or whoever, whether you're a Democrat or not, whoever voted for Biden and is now being usurped, as you lay out, by this decision being made by the donors, the billionaires. You know, they told us the billionaires are bad, except when they're billionaires. But the fact is, those voters historically go home and vote Democrat in large percentage.
I don't disagree. I think that she is great for their base. And I do think that we have to, certainly the bar was set very low by President Biden. And, she has a pulse. She's walking around. This is all good news for the Democrats. But what her problem is going to be is that her views are so incredibly radical, it does not go beyond their base. And our job is to make sure that we continue the message that we had from last week. Last week, Republicans were completely unified, and not just about unifying the Republican Party. It was about unifying America. We're talking about being wealthy again. We're talking about being safe again. We're talking about being strong again. We're talking about America being great again. And Americans have felt over the last 3.5 years the difference between a Biden-Harris administration and what they had 4 years before. Whether you're looking at energy, right? We were an energy independent nation when President Trump left office. With one fell swoop of the pen and President Biden's executive orders, we saw that all come crumbling down. We will be in that position again. And this is, again, something that started in California under a Kamala Harris, who was a attorney general, who was a senator, who was a DA. She championed things like the Green New Deal. Let's not forget she was a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. Everything from plastic bag bans to plastic straw bans, she has been there. And so what we need to do is continue to talk about that unifying message that brings people to the table like we were a week ago. And we're going to do that on the Republican side.
So let's talk campaign activity, boots on the ground coming out of her home state of California. Are there efforts being put together to bring Californians like yourself, the GOP chair, others in California, out on the campaign trail? Because if you're going to take someone on, the message can have potentially greater impact when there are those who've been either the victims of or familiar with their policies from our home state. In large part, this is how politics can be more effective.
Absolutely. And I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of the everyday Americans, but specifically everyday Californians. Everyday Californians that have been affected by people like Vice President Harris and the policies that they have championed. But in addition to that, Californians are going to do our part that we have to do here in California. You have to remember, Speaker Pelosi lost her position as Speaker of the House because of California. In the last 2 cycles, California Republicans have brought 5 new Republican seats to the House of Representatives. In that same time, Democrats actually lost 6 seats because we lost the seat to reapportionment. More people are leaving our state because of the lousy policies that California Democrats have championed. So we're going to be doing our part not only on the national stage and talking about the history, the core of who Vice President Harris is. But we're also going to do our job in making sure that we not only hold on to the House majority, but we grow the House majority right here in California.
GOP Chair in California, Jessica Millan Patterson. Jessica, thank you as always.
Great to be with you, David.